Hello, and welcome to ONET Academy. This previously recorded webinar is part of the ONET Academy webinar series, a set of online training presentations. This webinar recording, an ONET Academy briefing, using ONET to connect the unemployed to high growth and in-demand occupations, will start momentarily.
Melissa, thank you very much. And welcome to all of you to this webinar on reemployment opportunities through high-growth industries. My name is Janet Wall, and I'm Senior Trainer for ONET Academy. I'm an independent consultant, and I specialize in the areas of education and workforce development, program evaluation, and assessment. And for the last several years, I have been a part-time consultant for Mayor and Mayor, doing various ONET tasks to include webinars on how to use ONET for workforce development and educational development. So thank you very much for being here. And my goals for today are several. First, I'd like to spend just a moment talking about the world of work and the future world of work. And I'd like to show you some government resources that will help you understand the knowledge, skills, and abilities needed for emerging occupations, and to show a couple of websites that provide extensive resources to help you assist persons in preparing for good jobs with better pay and a brighter future. And I want to focus on ONET information, how that's incorporated into various job-seeking and career exploration tools. So with those objectives in mind, I'd like to just spend a moment on the current influences on the workforce in the U.S. And none of these are surprises, and you've been reading in the newspaper and seeing on television the variety of aspects related to these four areas. But the first one is globalization, and clearly we are now competing internationally for workers and for talent, and this is influencing how our corporations are operating, and it's also influencing on our workforce development. In fact, 1 in every 6 U.S. jobs deal with international trade in some way. So globalization there is really a powerful influence on the workforce and on the kinds of education that we should be providing to our young people and to people in transition in the workforce. Also, diversity is a major influence on the workforce as well. We have increased minority participation in the workforce with several educational and language challenges that are part of that. And we also have boomers that are retiring or wanting a different work style. With regard to diversity, the latest statistics are that by 2043, non-Hispanic whites will be a minority. And this is a major change from what our population has been and our workforce has been in the last several years. Technology clearly has had an impact on our occupations and on our jobs. I can't imagine that there's anyone in this webinar who hasn't had a change in their work tasks as a result of available technology. And then there's a skill demand. There's clearly a need for high-skilled workers with post-secondary education and training. In fact, the fastest growing jobs, you'll see in a chart that I'll show a little bit later, require post-secondary education. And I would be remiss if I didn't also mention that our current economic situation and job situation is providing a huge challenge to all of us as we're attempting to help people find jobs. All right, so what do we do to help people find the best jobs? Well, we have to be aware of the changes in the U.S. economy, be they long-term or temporary. We have to help people find new jobs and understand their economic needs. and, again, help people find the very best jobs that they're able to. So what are the best jobs? Well, many different definitions could be given. Basically, it's those with high growth potential, those with significant job opportunities, and also the emerging and hot areas, including homeland security. Now, I'm going to show three different charts now that give you an indication of the kinds of employments that are out there. And the first one is, these are the top 15 jobs, or occupations rather, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that have the most job openings. And this is certainly an area to look at as you are helping people find new jobs in this economy. So the most openings, retail salespersons, are at the top of the list. And you can see the employment in 2006 was about almost 4.5 million. Job openings, 193,000. And you can see that the training needed for that occupation is short-term on-the-job training. Now, those little dollar signs there represent wages and earnings for that occupation. And if there's $1 sign, it's at the low end. And if there are $4 signs, it's at the high end. So we can see for retail salespersons and cashiers, except gaming, and waiters and waitresses, they all require basically short-term on-the-job training, and the associated wages are at the low end. And then we have customer service representatives with slightly increased wages and requiring moderate on-the-job training. And you can see the differences there in the top 15 occupations with the most openings. This next chart has the top 15 occupations with the largest employment. And here we see again, retail salespersons is at the top of the list, and cashiers except gaming is number 2 on the list. And you can then see the associated earnings and the associated training that's required by those occupations with the largest employment. Now let's take a look at the fastest growing occupations and see the difference there. So these are the kind of hot, up-and-coming occupations that we need to be paying attention to because they are the fastest growing. But take a look at the difference in requirements there. Well, number 1 on the list is network systems and data communications analyst. And you can see that the percent change from 2006 projected in 2016 is a 53% increase in the number of jobs available. You can also see that the earnings are fairly high, but the training requirements are also much higher than we've been seeing in the previous 2 slides, so that's bachelor's degree. Second is personal and home care aides, and that's growing at a fast rate as well. However, the earnings are at the low end, and the training requirements are also at the low end, too, with short-term on-the-job training. Health aides, and computer software engineers, and you can see that the fastest-growing jobs tend to command higher salaries, but also the training requirements are much higher as well. And so this is really not a surprise because we've been hearing that for the fastest-growing jobs in the U.S. economy, there is a kind of a requirement that we have greater post-secondary education requirements. So this chart verifies that fact. But this is true. This is representative of all the fastest-growing jobs in the U.S. economy. And I see a question that has come in right away, and I'd like to address it. How were you able to estimate the percentages for job growth? I didn't do it. The Bureau of Labor Statistics is the agency that's responsible for tracking all that, and basically I found charts that they developed. So you're seeing a sampling of the information that the Bureau of Labor Statistics provides. So they're the ones that actually go out and check this and work with the states to come up with the projections. If you go to Bureau of Labor Statistics website, you'll be able to get far more detailed information and more extensive information than I'm providing here. So I'm just giving you a sampling of what's out there. All right, one way to find these high growth areas is, of course, by taking a look at what ONET has to offer. And I hope that most of you are familiar with the ONET system. But if you go to online.onetcenter.org, you can find a variety of information to include opportunities to find occupations. And as you can see on this slide, you can search by keyword. I haven't shown it on the slide here, but you can also search by STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. You can search by job family. You can search by career cluster. You can search by ONET descriptor and several other search mechanisms. But since we're talking about high growth, in-demand industries, I want to show you what happens when you take a look at the in-demand industry cluster. And just for purposes of example, I've put in or used from the drop-down menu healthcare. And if you click on Go, and you can do this for any of the high-growth industries, what you come up with is a listing of occupations, and our example here in the healthcare industry. So we see at the top of the list, and I want you to focus on the kind of the bottom section of this slide. What you see is that we have registered nurses, personal and home care, health care aides, home health aides, medical assistants, pharmacy technicians, dental assistants, fitness trainers and aerobics instructors, and so on. And these are all in-demand occupations. And if you click on any of those occupational titles, you can come up with a summary report of information about that occupation that comes from ONET Online. And it includes the usual knowledge, skills, abilities, tools, and technology, work style, work setting, and so on that you are familiar with in the summary reports that ONET provides. But I want to focus on what's in that red oval, and that's from this, you can actually click onto a new website called CareerVoyages. And in doing that, we would see that CareerVoyages is a really super resource for finding occupations that are in demand, that are high growth, and also emerging technologies. So it's based on ONET information. In fact, most of the credible resources that you would find on occupations are ONET-based because ONET is such a comprehensive and detailed occupational database. So that is the foundation for so many of these other tools that highlight various aspects of occupations. So if you click on careervoyages.gov, what we see is that it's part of a strategic effort called the High Growth Job Training Initiative, and it does focus on those industries and occupations that really have a solid career path that some people may have not focused on because, in fact, in some instances, there's a lack of qualified people to fill them. So let's take a look at CareerVoyages in a little more detail. So this is what the home page looks like. And if you take a look at the left-hand side, that area in the blue, you see that the identified in-demand industries include things like advanced manufacturing and aerospace and automotive and biotechnology and business management, administration, construction, education, and so on down the line. So these are the areas that the U.S. Department of Labor has specified as high-growth industries. I also want to focus on the target audience for this particular website. And you see 4 different target audiences here. At the top left, we see that there are resources and sets of information for students, also for parents, also for career changers, and also for career advisors. And so if you are part of any one of those groups, you can find information that is specific to your needs. But this whole website is just filled with excellent information that can help you as you work with individuals in terms of finding jobs, finding occupational fits, and so on. All right, well, one might ask, why these industries? Well, these industries were selected because they're projected to add many new jobs in the U.S. economy over the next several years. They're included because they're being transformed by technology and innovation. They're emerging new industries. They're determined to be vital to the overall health of the U.S. economy, and they're important for homeland security. So let's take a look at some of the details here. First, I'm going to show you emerging industries. And here under emerging industries, there's information on geospatial technology and also nanotechnology. So these are two industries that we should be tracking because they are becoming more and more important within our economy. But now, again, let's check out some details. And so let's go to healthcare, and all you need to do is click on healthcare, and that will bring you to just a wealth of information about that particular industry. So you'll see industry information, and you'll have access to just an enormous number of resources that you can utilize in healthcare. But taking a look at that listing right by that red oval, you see that there are sub-areas within that industry, one being nursing and allied health, medical laboratory, primary care, acute care, long-term care, and home health care. And so you can find information on those subsets within this industry. So let's take a look at what some of this would be. Clicking on medical laboratory, we would get information that looks like this. There's a general description of the healthcare medical laboratory subset. And so a nice description for people to read that indicates what that subset is about. So it starts with, did you know that not all jobs in healthcare require working directly with patients? And so medical laboratory personnel work behind the scenes and so on. So it gives a person a good feel for what that subset of the healthcare industry is about. You can see that you can access videos and career links and tools and technology, and we'll be going over this. So within the healthcare industry, we have access to many, many really high-quality videos. And you see just a sampling of them here on the slide. There's a video on biological technicians and cardiovascular technologists and technicians and chiropractors and clinical counseling and school psychologists, dental assistants, dental hygienists, and so on. So these are all healthcare-related videos that have been produced under the funding of the U.S. Department of Labor. They're really great videos. They're about 2 to 3 minutes of time, and very clearly give a snapshot of what's involved in that particular occupation. Focusing a little bit to the right on this slide, we see that there are postings of industry videos that have been created by other people. So, for example, on this slide, we see that there is a fairly long video of about 12 minutes, which has been provided by the University of Minnesota Research and Training Center on Community Living. And so you can access that video, and others as well are provided. So again, these are industry-related videos. All right, I see a question that's come in. What's the link to this website? It's CareerVoyages.gov, CareerVoyages.gov. All right, in addition to the videos, which I would really recommend that you have a look at if you're not familiar with them, we have career links. So here are some examples of education and career links in the healthcare industry. So we see that this site is linked to the American Association of Colleges of Pharmacy and the American Medical Association, Allied Health Careers, American Physical Therapy Association, and you can see the remainders that are on this particular slide. But there are many, many more. And each of the industry areas has this kind of information. So you can find this for the automotive industry and transportation and education and so on. So again, very helpful links to help people find out more about the occupation, all about the opportunities within this industry. All right, you can also find occupational information. So within the industry, you can find the in-demand occupations. And here again is just a partial listing of those that are available within the healthcare industry. So we see registered nurses, personal and home care aides, home health aides, nursing aides, orderlies, and attendants. And you can see just on this chart there's an indication of the projected need for employees within this occupation. You can take a look at the projected growth by looking at that chart, the little bar chart there. You can get an indication of the kind of salary and wages within that occupation, and also just get a nice little visual on the amount of education and training that's generally required by people within that occupation. You can also get details about any of these occupations. So this is an example of the kinds of things that you would find with regard to details for registered nurses. So you would initially get an occupational description. So a few sentences that provide an idea to people about what happens within that occupation. You can also get a sample of reported job titles. So registered nurses are often called other things when you take a look at job boards and job announcements. So you'll see registered nurse also being called a staff RN, a staff nurse, charge nurse, operating room registered nurse, clinical nurse, and so on. So this helps people to make the connection between this general occupation of registered nurses and what they might find in classified ads on job boards, in job advertisements. You can also, from here, as you see, can link to one of the videos that's associated with registered nurses, and also find out the tasks, knowledge, skills, abilities, interests, work styles, and tools and technology involved in this occupation. And the information for this is ONET-based. However, for CareerVoyages, they don't include all of the ONET information about the occupation. They have scaled it back to more generalized information, but it's still ONET-based. So if you would click on any of those tabs at the bottom, you would find the most important tasks involved in registered nurse, the knowledge, the skills, abilities, interests, work styles, and tools and technology. If you wanted to find out more comprehensive information, you would go back to ONET Online, find the summary report for registered nurses, and you would get similar information. As you can see, you would get a general description of that occupation, sample of reported job titles, but then the summary report would also provide tasks, tools and technology, knowledge, skills, abilities, work activities, work context, but also job zone, interests, work styles, work values, related occupations, wages and employment, and additional information. And it would provide this information in much more detail. If the summary report doesn't have sufficient detail for you, you can also go to the details report and get even more information about that occupation. But I think most people think that the summary report provides a good deal of information that's helpful for people as they want to find out about occupations, do career exploration, and see what the occupational outlook is for that occupation. You can also find information on education and training, apprenticeships, community colleges, four-year colleges, certifications, and other options. To find training opportunities in community and four-year colleges, you would just click on the relevant tab, and all you need to do is either select a state or put in your zip code, and you can find community colleges in your area that are providing education and training for the industry area that you're looking at. Also the same thing with four-year colleges, putting in just your state or zip code, and you can find the four-year colleges that provide programs in the industry area that you are investigating. You can also find certifications. So if you click on any of these industry areas or occupations, you can find associated certifications that people might be able to obtain to make themselves more job ready for opportunities within that occupation. You can also find in-demand occupations by state. And all you would need to do is to click on the state that you're interested in, and you would find information that looks like this. And here's information on registered nurses in Ohio. So we see at the kind of in the middle of this slide, we see wage comparisons between the United States and Ohio at the 10th percentile, the 50th percentile, and the 90th percentile. So you get a fairly good feeling for what the wages are at the low and the high end of the scale. And again, we have averages for the U.S. and averages for Ohio. You can also see employment trends between the United States and the state that you select. So here we see what the employment trend is for 2006 and projected to be in 2016 for the United States and for the state of Ohio. We can see the change in numbers and also see the average annual job openings across the United States and in the state of Ohio. And I see a question that's come in, and it seems that most of this job information is based on a national level. Can we break it down to our local level? Well, I'm showing you state information, and perhaps on your state website, it can break it down to a more local level. All right, I want to show you some other information that you can also find from this website of CareerVoyages.gov. And one really impressive thing, at least in my view, is that this information is also available in Spanish. So here's just an example of just all you need to do is to toggle up at the top right-hand side of the website and toggle so that you can see information in Spanish. Or if you look at this particular web page, you can see that if I would click on English, I would get back to the English version of CareerVoyages.gov. So this can be very, very helpful if you're working with a set of people that have as their primary language Spanish. Other additional resources include the InDemand Magazine, and they're primarily developed for, I would say, young people, for high school students who are doing career exploration, for people at the community college level who are thinking about various careers. But I think they can be very, very helpful also for adults who are in career transition. I like these because they are industry focused, and they include the vast variety of levels of occupations within the industry. So you would have occupations that are represented that require high school diploma and some training, all the way through occupations that require master's and doctorate degrees. So it gives you a really good feel for the diversity within that particular industry, and also it's a very engaging publication. It's very colorful. And all you need to do is to go to, again, CareerVoyages.gov and click on the InDemand Magazine tab, and these will come up, and you can download them if you want and get them reprinted to use with your clientele. Or you can actually get versions of this where you can actually sort of turn the pages yourself and read the magazine from cover to cover. And again, they're extremely engaging, very interesting publications. I know of some people who have downloaded the files, and if they have a particular industry in their state or in their local area that is being emphasized, they've asked the employers in that industry to actually provide funding for reprinting these documents, because the more marketing you can do for talented individuals in a particular industry, the better off the community is going to be, the better the employment opportunities are going to be, the educational opportunities, and the more successful the employers are going to be as well. So if you're not familiar with these publications, I highly recommend that you take a look at a couple of these to see how they're organized and the kind of information that we have. All right, the next thing that's available on Career Voyages is something called Career Compass. And Career Compass is basically just a very quick interest inventory. And what one would do would be to read the descriptions of those 6 areas: realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. And these are based on Holland's vocational personality theory that indicates that people and occupations can be described according to these 6 areas. And if a person is working in an occupation where that person's interest area is satisfied, that the person is going to be happier, stay on the job longer, and be more productive. So what we're really trying to do is to make that match between the person's interests and what the occupation can do in terms of satisfying that interest. We often talk about the fact that, we want to follow our passion and the money will follow. Often what they mean by passion is that your interest areas are being satisfied. So Career Compass, if you just click on the interest area that's your top interest area, and then your second interest area, and your third interest area, you can get a listing of occupations that actually match up with your most dominant interest area, or your top 2, or your top 3 interest areas. Now, Career Compass is a very quick, very basic interest area, but if you're really wanting to get a better, more reliable feel for your interest areas, the ONET folks have provided and developed this called the ONET Ability Profiler. And it is something that is available from onetcenter.org, and you can actually download a file to your computer. You can actually print out a paper copy of this instrument or a computerized version of the Ability Profiler and have people take that. And again, it's more extensive and more reliable. So you have an option here, either Career Compass or the ONET Ability Profiler. And again, it depends on how much time you have and how much extensive information that you want. So again, you can download the ONET Ability Profiler from www.onetcenter.org. And of course, it is available without cost. If you use the Ability Profiler, you get access to a listing of occupations that match up with that person's interest area. And a person then can take a look at those occupations and make decisions about that occupation in terms of whether or not it's something that they ought to pursue further. Career Compass does the same kind of thing. Again, a person would select their top and most dominant interest area, their second interest area, and their third most dominant interest area. And up will come occupations that match up with those interest areas. So this example shows that the person has selected realistic, artistic, and enterprising interest areas. And there are 3 occupations that are shown here on the slide. There are many, many more that would come up. But 3 of them are shown here. And that includes aircraft rigging assemblers, aircraft structure assemblers, aircraft systems assemblers. But again, as I mentioned, there are many more that would show up on the person's list. And what you can get from here, which is, I think, just really very helpful, you can get a description of that occupation. You can get the state report, just like I showed you before. But these occupations now come up from a person's interest areas, as opposed to, say, an occupational search. It also shows you the industries that require people working in that particular occupation. So for aircraft rigging assemblers, we see that that's involved with the advanced manufacturing industry, the aerospace industry, and the nanotechnology industry as well. So that occupation can be found in multiple industries. And if you're looking to help people be more viable across the board in various industries, you can see right here that these 3 occupations exist in 3 different industry areas. So if a particular industry is kind of on the wane and others are becoming more important in the U.S. economy, that person can make a transition a lot easier to a new industry within that same occupation. And I think that's a really important concept. And the tool that I want to show you next is tools and technology. You may have people that you're working with, clients that you're working with, that do have capabilities in certain tools and technology. And they want to make a transition or have to make a transition to another occupation. And what you can do is you can enter that particular tool or that particular technology into the tools and technology search, and you can get an idea of what other occupations actually use that tool and technology. So here I have entered CADCAM, which is computer-aided design, computer-aided manufacturing. And we see just a partial list of the occupations that actually include that particular software. So on this listing, we can see that CADCAM is involved in aerospace engineering and operations technicians, aerospace engineers, agricultural engineers, aircraft structural surfaces rigging and systems assemblers, animal scientists, anthropologists, and many others as well. So this can help, again, as you're working with clients, to find other occupations where their particular expertise in tools and technology may be applicable to other kinds of occupations. And again, you can see that there's that green InDemand logo next to some of the occupations. Those are the occupations that are identified as being high growth, high paying, fastest growing kinds of occupations important to the U.S. economy. Again, clicking on any of those occupational titles will bring you to an ONET summary report where you can find out more about that occupation. I want to show you one more website that might be useful to you as you are working with people in their career transition and their job hunt. And that's some reemployability assistance that you can find off of the Career One Stop website. And that URL is www.careerinfonet.org. So www.careerinfonet.org. And you can see here that there's a variety of information that you can find. And this website changes and evolves constantly, so it's not a one-time thing. You need to go back and see what else has been put up, how else the information has been provided. But I want to show you in particular on the top right-hand side of that slide, you can find various state job banks, and you can find additional resources as well that might be helpful to you as you work with clients. So taking a look at, though, this section within the red oval, there's a worker reemployment section that might be very, very helpful to you. And this has various other links that you can follow. For example, on the top left-hand block, you can find one-stop career centers that can help people do career exploration, get assessments, find some education and training opportunities, and find other kinds of support so that they can actually activate their job search and get reskilled. All you need to do there is, again, to put in your zip code or a city or state, and you will get a listing of the one-stop centers that match that criteria. In the middle top, you can get immediate help. Just by selecting a state, you can find information on unemployment benefits, health care coverage, information on dealing with a job loss. In the top right-hand block, there's information on finding a job, so how to use job banks, networking during a recession, job hunting after a job loss. The bottom right-hand section, you can find ways of upgrading your skills. So sometimes we do need to take additional education and training to make ourselves qualified and ready for a new kind of job. So here you can find information on taking a class, short-term training, begin or finish a degree, and also paying for schooling. And in the middle block on the bottom, changing careers. So what are your skills? Switching occupations or industries, making yourself marketable. And you find this information out in general and also by state. So I think you need to take a look at that portal and find out if there's any information there that can be particularly useful for your clientele. All right, so what should educators and workforce development professionals do? Well, basically, we're around to help students and job seekers try to understand where the opportunities are located, what the labor market trends are, and what the in-demand occupations are. So we need to stay up to date with the very excellent resources that are provided at the federal and the state level, and we've seen some of them today. And of course, we need to encourage people to continue their education and training and also reskilling, because even in this job market, education pays. And the more education you have, the lower the unemployment rate and the higher the median weekly earnings. So in summary, our goals have been to better understand the future world of work and to see government resources that can help people find good jobs, better pay, and have a brighter future. And so what I'd like to do is to address any questions or comments that you have at the current time. And some of them have been already posted, and I'll go through them, but I also want to encourage you to use that horizontal chat box feature and enter your question, and I'll do my best to answer them if I can, or direct you to resources that might help you answer the question. Has the current economic decline impacted what would be classified as emerging occupations? Well, based on the people that I talk to, the things like the projections and the classifications are remaining constant. The federal government doesn't update things really on a daily basis, and there are temporary fluctuations in the U.S. economy all the time. So basically what the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the U.S. Department of Labor, and so on attempt to do is to focus on the general trends that are happening out there. So basically everything All the projections are remaining the same, despite the fact that we have this, what is hopefully a temporary setback in the U.S. economy. I've answered the question about the local level. Link to this website I answered as well. Okay. There's a question about the theory on the interest inventory. That's Holland's vocational personality theory. And again, it is based on this notion of people and occupations can be classified according to, or described according to 6 different areas: realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. And just very quickly, realistic are basically people and occupations where you have to use your hands, tools, work with animals, and so on. So it's kind of hands-oriented. Investigative are the problem-solving types, the scientific types. Artistic is, that's pretty well described. They're the performing arts people, the writers, the creative folks. S is social. Those are the helping occupations. E is enterprising. That's, I would say, also entrepreneurial. So like the Donald Trumps of the world, sales, leading people. And C are conventional. And that's people who like to follow rules, work with details, and so on. So basically, that's Holland's vocational personality theory in a nutshell. The next question is, how do you determine your top interest area? Back on Career Compass, what you would do is you would read the description, each of the 6 descriptions, and make that determination as which of those 6 areas is most like you. Then second, which area is second most like you, and then which area is third most like you. And then, of course, I also recommended that you actually take a full-fledged interest inventory like the ONET Interest Profiler. So that's how your top interest areas are determined. Yes, I'm talking. And the next question is, are you talking about the ONET Interest Profiler? I talked about both the Career Compass, which is a kind of a quick and dirty interest inventory, and the ONET Interest Profiler, which is way more extensive, but more valid and reliable, of course. Does the client just pick what they think would interest them the most? And how is this determined? I think if I answered that question, they would read those descriptions and determine which one is most like them. With the ONET Interest Profiler, they actually take a look at, if I recall correctly, it's 180 questions, and they indicate whether or not they like or don't like or are unsure about that particular activity or that task that is present. All right. Thank you for your nice comment about presentations being informative. How do we help people find jobs in such a tough economy where people are still being laid off? Well, I guess that's sort of a universal question these days, but I hope that I have provided you with some places to go where you can find some information about helping people do exactly that, and also to tap into the state job banks. And if you take a look at the job banks, you'll also see listed, kind of the major commercial players as well, like Monster and Career Builder and so on. So those are the kinds of resources that I would tap and take a look at, and I think you'll find those to be helpful. All right. I have not found a crosswalk for civilian equivalents of military occupations to be helpful. Is there a better source or a more effective way to use it? You can go to the National Crosswalk Service Center, and you'll have to Google that because I don't remember the URL, but it's an outfit in Iowa. And they're the ones that actually do the crosswalks, or that have the information of various crosswalks, not only military to civilian occupations, but also occupations to a variety of different taxonomies. I'm not sure it's going to be more helpful than the crosswalk that you would find on ONET Online, but you'll find a variety of databases there that maybe might be helpful to you. The next question is, how do we prepare individuals who would like to pursue a career with the government and lack those skills? I'm not quite sure what the intent of the question is. If it's how do you prepare individuals, you can find on CareerVoyages and also other websites ways of finding education and training opportunities. I would go to the servicelocator.org, and there you can, again, find ways to get to the one-stop centers. And one-stop centers also have information about training and education opportunities and how to pursue them and find those kinds of opportunities. So maybe take a look at that website and see if it's helpful. What about disability and career advisement? Can ONET be of use? Yeah, absolutely. If you take a look at ONET Online, you can see a variety of helpful information to include, I would say, I think it's the ability section, which also has information on physical abilities, for one thing. And you can take a look at those occupations that have a very high requirement for the physical abilities or a lower level of importance and level of those abilities, and find information that way. Also, if you go to ONET Online, there is a link to Job Accommodations Network that you'll find. I believe it's at the bottom of the home page. So it's JAN, Job Accommodations Network. And there's a whole lot of information on Job Accommodations Network that can be useful to you. All right. Let's see what else has come in. All right, there's a question here. Career Compass was shown. Is the ability profiler a tool to assess skills, not interests? Yeah, the ability, there are three assessment instruments that are provided. One is the interest profiler, one is the work importance locator profiler, and the third is the ability profiler. And the ability profiler is a set of actual tests or assessments that are ability related, and what you end up with that is a profile of the individual versus the profile of the occupations that match up, and you have that presented at all job zones. And job zone is 1 through 5, with 1 being the lowest level of education, training, and experience required, and 5 being the highest level of training and experience and education. So you can take a look at what the ability profiler has to offer. If you go to onetacademy.com, you will see that there are archived webinars that relate to those assessments, and you might want to tap into one of those archived webinars to learn a little bit more. There's actually a 3-part series on the ability profiler, which focuses on, number 1, an overview, number 2, how to administer, and the number 3 is how to interpret the information from the ability profiler. So you might find that helpful. Any suggestions for rural areas is another question. Well, all the websites that we focused on today are available to anyone who has internet access. So I would suggest that those tools are pertinent for the rural areas as well. All right. Well, again, there's a further question. Any suggestions for rural areas with very little resources? Everything I showed you today is available without cost, so resources should not be a particular issue. Have results of any efforts to identify industry skill standards been incorporated in ONET or CareerVoyages? I'm really not sure about that, so I don't think I'll be able to answer that question very well. If you have any other questions, please send them in. And I appreciate the nice comments that some of you are making, so that's making me feel real good. Let me move on to just one last slide and go ahead and send questions in. But I mentioned onetacademy.com, and we have a number of archived webinars up there and some podcasts as well. So short 5 to 7 minute podcasts that you can listen to about how other people are using ONET in their particular situations. But here again are just some examples of some of the webinars that are archived. How to download and use the ONET Interest Profiler and Work Importance Profiler. I mentioned the Ability Profiler webinar series, whole person assessments, ONET tools for job seekers and students, for military in transition, the older worker in transition, linking education, occupations, and pay, and how ONET information is updated, and so on. So there's a question about what is whole person assessment. I would say go to onetacademy.com and listen to that related webinar. It actually focuses on the 3 assessment instruments and the kind of information that can be provided for career exploration using those tools. All right. I don't see any further questions coming in, so I want to thank you very much for your attention today. And it was a pleasure being with you on this webinar, and I hope I see you on future webinars. Thanks very much and have a wonderful day.
This concludes today's session. Thank you for your participation, and we look forward to having you on future sessions. Have a great day.